As a criminal defense attorney, I have stories. I have secrets that I hear. I have secrets of my own. But this video is going to be about one of the cringiest things that I have ever seen the prosecution do. My name is Veronica. I am a criminal defense attorney here in Los Angeles, and I help people who have been arrested put their criminal cases behind them so that they can enjoy their lives and their freedom. And again, this video is going to be about one of the cringiest things that I've seen the prosecution do. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, I was defending a domestic violence case, and it was going to trial. And as part of this domestic violence case, there was a restraining order in place, keeping the victim, alleged victim, and her fiance from seeing each other, from being near each other, from any contact with one another, which is a whole other video, which I pretty much made in and of itself. The bullshit that was there. They had, despite the fact that they had a newborn child by the time that we got to trial, almost 1-year-old child, and a 3-year-old that he was the stepfather for. And was taken care of with the father out of the picture. Okay, so there's this restraining order in place, right? And when I first talked to the client and the alleged victim, they, it was obvious to me that they were probably in contact with one another, but they knew well that they could not be, right? And they never told me that they were in contact with one another. So they actually had to live in separate places. They had the 2 kids that they were trying to, through their moms, they were trying to make sure that they could both see the kids. They were doing this exchange. Obviously, it's unpleasant. It's expensive. It is not good for their family. But of course, the prosecutor's office doesn't care. And by the way, of course, this victim, who is very outspoken and actually one of my most favorite people I've ever met in this job. She's amazing. She was, if you've ever seen the Honey Badger videos, she's like that. She told the prosecution so many times that she did not want to prosecute this case, but they didn't give a fuck what she wanted, right? And they didn't give a fuck. She tried so many times. They both did domestic violence classes, but our judge was new to being a judge and was kind of scared to lift the restraining order. It was a huge pain in the ass. Anyway, we get to the point of not the case, but the judge, the system, how the whole thing was going. It was a pain for them. And I really thought, this should be a case where they're allowed to see each other after they bolt in domestic. Normally, we would have no problem there. But the domestic violence restraining order, restraining them from even seeing one another, remained in place. Okay, so we go to trial. And we're doing the trial, and the prosecution is not doing well. They're losing. They're losing pretty badly. And by the way, this is the city attorney's office, not the district attorney's office. City attorney of Los Angeles, not their finest moment. So they're losing pretty freaking badly. It's not going well for them. I mean, at one point, one of the officers had told the alleged victim that basically she'd never see her kids again unless she said that there was domestic violence, and there's video of it. I mean, it was not going well for them. And then one morning, I show up, and these trials, they take usually like a few weeks with jury selection and all. So one morning we show up, and the city attorney is all excited, and he says, "Your Honor, we're going to be adding this additional charge for violation of restraining order." And look, my client and the victim, our little honey badger here, they were not stupid. They were not ever going to be in contact with one another in a place where they could possibly be found out. I know that for sure. And so he's like, "Oh, Your Honor, we're going to have to add these charges here because another prosecutor at my office saw after court last night, saw the defendant and the alleged victim in contact outside of the courthouse. They were standing there talking to one another." And I look at my client because I was like, unbelievable, right? All this time, right? They've probably been in contact, but all this time, and suddenly these 2 people right outside the courthouse would just be standing there talking to each other? like, that didn't make any sense to me. So I'm looking, I'm like, what the heck? And he's looking at me like, no, that didn't happen. I'm like, what? And so, the prosecutor's all happy, maybe he wins on one charge, the violation of the restraining order, if he loses on everything else. So he's telling the judge this, and he's able to add this charge. I mean, that's how the law works. The law lets him do that. And so, we adjourn briefly. I talked to the alleged victim, and she's like, what the fuck? That didn't happen. Why would we stand right outside the courthouse where anybody could see us, where the prosecutor on our own case could see us, where anybody could see us? And I was like, yeah, I mean, well, I believe you, but what the heck did the other prosecutor, who was not on the case, what did she see? And they're like, we don't freaking know, but we didn't do this. So I'm like, oh, okay, great. And so they make a big thing about this. Now the jury comes back, oh, we have this additional charge here, we have to tell everyone, and it looks bad, right? It looks like if they're adding an additional charge now, and you can see, the alleged victim didn't want these charges to go forward. They obviously want to be together. That you can see how, if you didn't know them, like I knew them at the time, that maybe they did violate the restraining order. Who knows? And if that's the case, as the jury, you don't know what the consequences are. You just check, like, guilty, not guilty, basically. So if you feel like they did contact each other and you do believe the prosecutor, then what are you going to do? So then, the DA calls that other prosecutor to the stand, and she's like, oh, yes, I saw them together. She describes this whole thing, how they're standing outside the courthouse. They have the stroller with the baby, especially damning, describing it in detail. And I just thought, like, what the heck is going on here? Because, okay, these guys, the prosecutors, they're not all good, but for the most part, they're not just going to make shit up halfway through the trial just to get a conviction, right? It's not, I mean, they could, but for this kind of case, it just didn't seem like that was very likely. If it were a detective, I would say, yeah, like, he's just lying to get a conviction. But another city attorney, probably not. But who the heck did she see then? Like, what is she even thinking? Like, what happened? And, my client and the alleged victim are mad as shit about this. And so the next day, so I prepare my cross-examination. We come back the next day, and she had been shown on direct examination by the prosecutor. She had been shown pictures of the alleged victim, and she said, yes, that's definitely who I saw. So we come back the next day, and I decide, you know what, like if she's just going to lie, what can I do? But I talked to my client, and it seemed like if he was talking to anyone outside the courthouse, it was his mother, who was, I don't know, at least 20, probably 30 years older than the alleged victim. It didn't look like her, so that's kind of strange. And by the way, this whole thing adds an extra 2, maybe 3 days to the trial. All the jurors have to sit there for all this. I have to come back. The alleged victim has to come back. My client is missing work. It's taking up an entire courtroom in one of the busiest courthouses in the whole county. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna bring the alleged victim. I'm gonna bring her in. But before I do that, I'm going to ask this prosecutor about the hairstyle that the person that she saw with my client, what was the hairstyle? And ultimately, basically, I got her to say that the hair was maybe about shoulder length, it was all down, and it was curly. And that's what I was going for, because the alleged victim has beautiful hair that is about waist length and absolutely straight. I suppose she could curl it, but it would never end up to be about shoulder length and curly. But she had seen, remember, the prosecutor had already been shown pictures in front of the jury of the alleged victim and said, yes, that's for sure her. So then I bring after she said, yes, it was for sure shoulder length, it was curly, I bring the alleged victim in, and I told her beforehand, take your hair down. So she had her hair down, and it was, Lady Godiva hair, so long, so straight, and say, is this the person that you saw speaking to my client? And she had to at that point. I know she wanted to support her colleague, and she would have lied a bit for him, but at this point she was caught, right? She's not going to make this whole thing up for him, but she would lie to try to keep it, like, she saw a picture of the alleged victim, who looks nothing like the mother, by the way, and said, yeah, that's her. So she'd lied already. But how can she lie at this point? She said shoulder length and curly, and now we have Lady Godiva long, like, to her waist. So the alleged victim walks in with her hair in all of its glory, and I ask that prosecutor, is this the woman that you saw speaking to my client? And she had to say no. She didn't want to. She was nervous. But she said, well, I mean, I thought so, but at the time her hair was shorter and it was curly. And so I asked the alleged victim, are you wearing any extensions right now? Can you pull at your hair, show us that it's your real hair? She does it. She's mad as hell in true honey badger fashion. And I mean, I suppose that the prosecution could have said, well, maybe she was wearing a wig, but I think even they at that point realized that this was an embarrassment. So this is all in front of the jury. This witness, the prosecution witness, gets off the stand. I think that the prosecutor on the case, he did try to save it. He did try to ask her some follow-up questions there, but what can you do at that point? They were not memorable if they existed. And, outside the presence of the jury, the judge asks the prosecutor, do you have any motions? And he says, well, Your Honor, we would move to dismiss that count. But how he said it, I didn't do a good job of explaining it right then, because how he said it was almost as if he was giving us a gift. And it's like, dude, you just wasted so much of everyone's time with absolute nonsense. It was clearly the mother that she saw. And really what happened, I think, is that she, being a non-detail oriented, reckless person, sloppy person, I would say, in this case, and I think she deserves that, said to the DA on my case, oh, hey, I saw your victim talking to the defendant on your trial case outside. And then, of course, the prosecutor on my case gets all fired up, and he's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to file charges based on that. And, there was more to it, too. She wrote this whole declaration out that was used on their part in order to bolster this additional charge. One thing that I will say that they didn't do, but they could have, is they could have actually tried to increase his bond based on this. That's bullshit. Like, make him pay additional money or go into jail, which I warned my clients was possible, but luckily they didn't do it either. They forgot, actually, probably. In this case, they probably forgot. But that could have happened here. Anyway, this is one of the most embarrassing things that I've ever seen them do. They actually did, they did dismiss the count, of course, because he knew he was going to lose. I almost wish that they would have left it, but anyway, I was, there's even more to it, was where I was prohibited from bringing it up during closing argument, and, I still, of course, tried to say, and you guys have all seen firsthand how, based on the word of one person alone, a completely false accusation could be made. And the DA's objection, Your Honor. Because why should I be able to bring it up? Why should I be able to bring up how very close my client was to being sandbagged and convicted of a crime that he didn't commit? Anyway, the city attorney's office in Los Angeles should be ashamed of itself. By the way, this is your taxpayer dollars at work. Right? Like, who do you think pays for this? When the city of Los Angeles and the state of California franchise tax board, when they want their money, this is what they freaking do with it. Anyway, if you do have a criminal case in Los Angeles, I can definitely help you with that. Just feel free to click on the link below to book a consultation or give me a call.